Hi, hello everyone. This week, we will work on the practical exercise, the assessment center provided by the ANBS Career Consultants Career Services. After you're watching this video, you go to the website of the ANBS Career Consultants Career Services and then go to work on the assessment center exercise. In this website, you can get a lot of the tips on some of the assessment center tests, including like the group test, the case studies, presentation, and even you can work on some psychometric tests to practice. Besides that, you can also go to the new career platform that is the Career Connected. In this website, we're providing you a lot of the advisors, support, workshop to the students to prepare their career development. If you have any questions, please just let me know. I hope you enjoy this and practice on preparing for your career development. In order to hire the right candidate, companies nowadays may use assessment center. But remember that assessment center is not a place. Instead of, this is a term used to denote use of multiple assessment and methods on individuals. Companies are using a series and multiple assessment and effort in order to screen out the right candidates. Usually at the beginning of the assessment center, they will have the online application and online test in order to screen out the potential candidates. And then they will go to the second stages, and that is the assessment days. The company will set up a series of assessment to assess the employees, the potential candidates. And after that, they will select the right candidate and starts to work for the organization. So this is the usual, the common assessment arrangement in the assessment center. And here is one of the examples, the typical example for the graduate scheme assessment center. Usually, the application will start in September to January, the semester 1. And then they will have the closer screening and filtering, and they will have some online tests, psychometric tests, etc., in order to screen out some potential candidates. And in March and April, they will go into the main stage of assessment center, that is the assessment and giving the offer to the candidates. And after that, we may have some potential reopen top up in May to June or even July. It depends on whether they really find the right candidate to fill the position. And in July, they will have to review, and so to evaluate the effectiveness of the assessment center. And in August, and usually the graduate starts to work to the company. So this is the typical graduate schemes candidate by using the assessment center. In the assessment center, the applicants invited to complete assessment together over 1 or 2 days. It depends on the complexity of the task and how many assessments that they have to perform. And there are a combination of different kinds of the tasks, including like the work sample, interview, psychometric tasks, etc., etc. And it could be very tricky to design because, well, on one hand, they have to consider what types of or what kind of the assessment that should be needed to certain positions, and also, well, what criteria for the job positions that they need. And so that's why, well, they have to design in a more comprehensive way. This is one of the examples that we can see, and the candidate need to go through the whole day assessment center test. And at the beginning, they usually have the welcome and introduction section. And after that, they will have the competency-based interview and have a short breaks and followed by the analyze presentation exercise. And also we'll have the lunchtime. And lunchtime probably is also one of the important assessments as well, because to see whether the candidate will have the business manner, etc. And after that, we will have the role play exercise, a short break, and finally, we'll also have some in-tray exercise or work sample. And this is one of the examples that we can see the company using assessment center to screen out the candidate. In short, the assessment center is a combination of the methods that were used together and to assess to screen out the right candidate. So would you consider that it is so difficult? And do you feel this so flattening is a kind of flattening the employees, flattening the candidates from either applying or turning out? Would you also consider that this is an approach for forcing you to reveal your internal secrets, some confidential secrets, and creating anxiety? Is it what the purpose of assessment center? No, indeed, not at all. Why the organization use assessment center? The aim is to predict the performance and behavior against certain criteria. The organization, they have to go through the job analysis to understand the description of the job, to understand what criteria of the person that they have to take up the position. And because of that certain criteria, they have to use this criteria in order to screen out the right candidate. Having the series of the assessment and effort to screen out a candidate can help them to ensure that those candidates will have higher performance and relevant behavior that are associated with this criteria. An assessment center also provides more reliable information to make an informed and objective decision. Remember that if they only used one single method, such as interview, to select the candidate, interview probably is good because we have the face-to-face interaction, but we cannot fully, completely rely on this interview method. One of the reasons because is that people can also manipulate and during the impression management job in order to impress, to enhance the image in front of the interviewer. In such a case, assessment center will provide more reliable information because it's not only relying on the subjective interview result. Instead of, they may also incorporate some objective exercise and also we have a series of the method so that we are assuming that we are expecting that to have a more reliable information. And you will also have the opportunities to assess not only for the individual, but also as a part of the team. You can also set up the assessment center, incorporate some teamwork so that to see whether the candidate will also have the interpersonal skills, the leadership skills, the team member skills, and so for communication skills to see whether they are the good team players. And by using the assessment center, we can also see the candidates operate in a number of different environments. If you're setting it like a scenario or the work sample, and so we can see how the employees, how the candidate will react in different situations. And it can also give candidates a chance to find out more about the company, because if only having the interview, maybe just half an hour, 1 hour, and the candidate do not know very well of the company as well. But if they perform in the assessment center, they have a series of the assessment, they can also have a more chance to find out more about the company. Logistic issues and probably assessment center can take one afternoon or a couple of days. It depends on the requirement of the company and also the complexity of the assessment. For some very top level of the managerial job position, and so probably the assessment center can go through a couple of days instead of just one afternoon. And it could be often well residential, and it could be on site or in some hotels or in outside the company. It depends on the company preference as well. And sometimes we're also including a formal evening or lunch, evening meal or lunch, because well, as I said, that it also can test the interviewee's business manner. It could involve between 6 to 20 candidates, and also because we can also see the interaction with the team members, and often the second stage after successful first interview, because for assessment center could be quite costly. It's very time consuming and also using a lot of the resources. That's why usually may have some first interview to screen out the possible candidates, and then we'll go through this second stage. There are three important points to remember. First, if the candidates to have the assessment center assessment, it means that they are very close to the job and they have already go through some earlier stages of the screening. However, you're not competing against the other candidate. You also need to end up with working with some of them. And so well, they may be your potential team players, the potential teammate in some future. So that's why it's also quite important to have a good image and also communication with those employees, those candidates. And the assessment center are usually essentially to be fair, and so to make sure that everyone are judged in a fair manner. We also need to bear in mind that designing an assessment is not an easy job. And what we have to do is we have to ensure that the skills and competency that the firm require and what particular skills and competency that should be associated with particular job position and what behavior do we expect your successful graduate employees exhibit. We have to consider all these requirements before designing your assessment center exercise, because remember that your design should be highly associated with all these requirements for the job positions. And here are some of the tips that we can provide it in order to design the assessment center. Many of the company, if they would like to test the candidates' leadership, and so probably interview, group discussion, and personality profile should be used in assessment center. If the company would like to particularly assess the analytical skills, interview, job discussion, presentation, in-tray exercise, as well as the personality psychometric exercise should all to be included. And so here, the table is one of the tips that we can have a look in order to understand what type of the assessment method should be used to assess which criteria that we would like to test.